So, thank you, Cameron, for joining me on my little vlog journey of core values counseling. I wanted to interview you today and just have a conversation with you about this happy couples project that you're doing.
Thank you.
Um, so, first, let's just talk about how we met. I met you, what, 2 years ago, maybe?
At least, yeah, 2.5, I think. Yeah.
Time flies when you're having fun, right?
Yeah.
But, you were the only person who's ever come to my level 1 Gottman couples training and level 2 Gottman couples training who had no background in couples counseling, not even any counseling or coaching, in your life. So, I just thought it was so fascinating, and what was even more fascinating was your knowledge of the Gottmans. So, I've also never had anyone come into the class who knew more than I did about the background of the Gottmans, like what's John Gottman's middle name, that kind of thing. What is John Gottman's middle name?
Mordecai. It's probably a good trivia night answer for anyone who's looking for it.
Exactly. So that's how I met you, and, I have just been so impressed and inspired by you, and I'm gonna let you tell a little bit about your background and how you come to this work and this desire to start this project called the Happy Couples Project.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been just a incredible pleasure. I remember how excited I was. It was 3 years ago when I was in a session where the facilitator was asking, "What's something you really dream of doing that you could commit to and make it happen?" And I remember a few things went through my head, but one of them was I just love Gottman method. Um, and I wonder if I could get trained. Then I might immediately my brain said, no, no, you're not a therapist. You can't. And I ended up Googling, and that's how I found you guys. And I saw they took my credit card, so I think I get to show up. So
Not
that
even
was
meant
how I first came to your
that.
training. Yeah. So my story, very briefly, is I ended up starting a company after college. I'm one of those people who just never wanted to work for anyone else, and I ended up over the course of 20 years, it turned into an employee-owned company in 2019. So it's an employee cooperative. We became a certified B Corp in 2014, where we really kind of looked at how can we look at the way that we're doing business differently than just kind of the standard for-profit approach. And where I think that's relevant is I realized I really always felt this tension between getting things done and doing right by people. And I
Mm,
feel like I would see a lot of organizations that sort of made it all about people, but often they would really struggle to produce results. They would struggle to hold people accountable or to make hard decisions. And then I saw a lot of organizations that were all about results, and they would often paradoxically, not only would they often, I think, treat people really poorly, end up having kind of unhealthy, toxic cultures, as a result of that, they often wouldn't get that much done either because if everyone's always quitting or gossiping or whatever. And so I found that balance of getting things done and creating an environment where people feel well treated and motivated and inspired to do great work. I found that just to be really fascinating.
mm,
So that was my professional background, and then of course my personal story was I had never thought very much about romantic relationships. I think like maybe not everyone I should say, but like a lot of us, that was it was a goal of mine. But I just sort of figured, total lack of humility. Like I'm pretty good at these. My parents are really happy. I've generally been pretty good at making friends and meeting people, and I think I'm a reasonable person. So I must be good at relationships. And I had a relationship well over a decade ago that lasted for a couple of years, and it just got worse and worse and worse. There were no real like big fights or issues. We somehow just went from really happy to really unhappy about a year and a half later.
mm.
And that was when, for the first time in my life, I sort of looked in the mirror and said, what do I actually know about creating a good relationship? And I hadn't, so much as read a single book or listened to a podcast or, even looked at like a tweet. I just knew nothing formal about romantic relationships. It was just kind of all intuition and what maybe friends would talk about. And so that led me on a big journey to start reading books. And I ultimately, that was where I sort of fell in love with the Gottman method because I read a bunch of stuff, some of which was really good, some of which was not so good, but that just resonated. And so I think my new venture, if it was, probably doesn't sound as catchy, but really at the core, I would call it like it's all about creating intentional couples. And that was kind of the commitment that I made was whoever I was next going to be in a long-term relationship, that we were going to be intentional about our relationship. We were going to design it, not just let it happen by default, because I had lost confidence, and that is a way to build a relationship. So that sort of led me, and my now wife and I met, I think probably 6 months in, I started um, introducing some of the things I had learned from the Gottman method just to kind of test the waters. And I was really thrilled that she was willing to engage with the relationship, that she didn't have this mental block that either the relationship is great or you're a failure. And I think that's what I would see a lot of people believe. And I think that's sad because I don't think any of us just spring out of the womb or spring out of high school, college, whatever phase in life being awesome at relationships. I think they're incredibly rewarding, but I think they're also like so many things. There's some skills in them that we could all benefit from working on.
Right. So, I did hear you avoid the cliche of relationships are hard work.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your philosophy of how to be intentional about relationships.
Thanks for noticing that. Yeah, I have a funny like pet peeve. I've interviewed people who are like treat your relationship like your job, and I kind of hate that because I don't think it's not totally wrong, but I think there's a couple things that need to be highlighted. I think one, like our relationships aren't our job, right? Our job pays us money, and so even if it totally stinks, we get something in return. Um, our relationship is really something that I think we get into them because of all the things we enjoy about that person and what we're able to create together. This sense of play and learning and creation, and these are all the reasons we get into relationships, not maximizing productive capabilities. And so I think I think a lot of us just work so much in our lives in the modern world. We're always kind of there's like this invisible finger, wagging at us and telling us what we should be doing more of and why we're deficient. And I actually think if we go back to when we meet our partner, there's this thing called the self-expansion effect when we meet someone new and we fall for them, which is that we start incorporating their abilities and their personality into our own, and we actually expand. Our sense of the world expands. And that's where we work more at our relationships, probably when we meet our partner than at any other time, but it
Mhm.
doesn't feel like work. And it's because the work is happening in a context of play and novelty and fun, and a kind of rewarding challenge versus the kind of challenge that you do because you might have to for an external reward like a salary or something else.
That is so cool. So, in your building of this kind of new way of thinking about helping couples, how have you organized it? What's coming up for couples that they could be looking forward to?
Yeah. So they're the core of what I realized, and this was actually in your awesome trainings, was I'm most excited about working with couples in a group context versus individually. And a lot of it is because in a group context, I see that kind of play and creativity happen. I think it often really empowers the couples. Um, but also, I think that that's an opportunity for us to just engage in a different way. So the main things we do are we create connection experiences, places where couples can come together and not just do something that's enjoyable, but something that actually connects them more deeply. So those are things like what my sort of hope is that couples will say, "Hey, we're going to take our budget and our time that we've allocated to our date night, and we're going to go put it into a similar experience." So we're curating experiences like a cocktail making class or a pickleball class or an improv session we're setting up, and so it's going to be fun, it's going to be novel, but it's also going to have just a connection exercise kind of snuck inside of there. And so that it's really, in my mind, like a no-brainer where you're spending money that you've already allocated to your date nights, and you're basically like letting go of the headache of the logistics and the hassles of all of that. And then you also know that you're going to leave being more connected, engaged, not just having spent time together doing something fun. And then
Right.
the second thing is building on all the great work that is out there to do longer sessions for folks who really want to intentionally engage with their relationship. So I call them fun shops, workshops that are fun. And those are built on everything from the Gottman method and their principles to positive psychology, which is an area I got a graduate degree, which is really highlighting not just we of course all have these challenges in life, but what about all the good things? What about our strengths? What about our values? What about our sense of purpose? And how do we engage with those in a space that's really going to be fun and uplifting? So those are the two main things we're doing.
I love it. And this just launched, right?
It just launched in the middle of September. We've had one event already, and we have roughly one event every month.
Oh, that's so cool. And when will these fun shops begin?
So our first fun shop is, off the top of my head, December 13th. I'm quite confident that's right. And that is going to be all about making it an awesome 2026. So we're going to be doing some visioning and using some of the tools to look ahead at our year intentionally and figure out what can we do to really make it a great year, not just individually, but for us as a couple and a family.
And will that be like an all-day workshop or just evening or what?
That'll be a half day workshop on a Saturday, so from 9 to 12, and then we'll have food afterwards.
Oh, nice. I might actually be able to make that.
Good. Love to see you. Scheduling couples, as you know, can be a bit of a challenge.
Yes, it can be. It can be. But I think they're just going to be flowing in from all over the place because this is unique. You know, the Gottmans really have nailed down what it takes to have a lasting relationship. And as we know in their Sound Relationship House, we have the friendship um, system, which is all about knowing your partner's internal world, external world, that love maps, the turning towards that fondness and admiration. And I feel like your workshops or fun shops are going to be very instrumental in building that friendship. But then also the shared meaning system is really important for every couple, and that's helping develop those rituals and making your life a little bit more intentional, maybe a
Mhm.
lot more intentional. And it seems like your Happy Couples project could definitely be part of that for couples who may not know how to do it otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, one of my big passions with relationships is about this idea of taking the invisible and making it visible.
Mhm.
There's this beautiful quote from The Little Prince, if we have any Little Prince fans out there, that we can only see clearly with our heart because that which is most essential is invisible. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of the best things in our life are unfortunately invisible, and so we tend to not pay them as much attention. And so those are things, as you mentioned, things like friendship, cultivating a sense of fondness and admiration and a shared story, and also really like getting clear on what are our not just our personal values, but what are our shared values as a family. What is our sense of purpose? Because I think as human beings, if we're clear on kind of a shared why behind where it is we're going in life, then all of a sudden everything looks completely different. And I think we often lose sight of in a very individualistic culture, and often we're inside of organizations that, of course, are trying to build core values and a shared purpose. We lose sight of taking that time to do it for each other.
Mhm. Well, I love it. It's so I don't know, it feels very inspired. Like this is a I'm so excited for your project because it is hard to, as we go along in our day-to-day work life, home life, we're taking care of, 7 grandchildren here and there, and we're very busy. I was like, "What is my hobby?" I was listening to NPR this morning. They're talking about hobbies and how important that is. I'm like, "Grandchildren. Grandchildren are
Right.
my hobby right now." But, in all of that, at every stage of life, it's so easy to lose sight of this essential connection that you have with your partner, and it's so easy to take each other for granted. And I I think it's wonderful that you're giving couples ideas and setting it up so that it's easy to have an intentionality as we join in some of your fun date nights. and fun shops. So
Well, and I'm guessing you see a lot of this, Sabrina, but it seems like in the modern world, it's so easy to let the the relationship go on the back burner. And I think, I just had one of these not too long ago with my lovely wife, Anna, but we are most definitely not perfect. And we had, one of those disputes over, some of the things around parenting, how best to raise our child. And of course, it's not that these things don't matter. They do matter. But if we lose sight of this fact that the best gift we can give our son is a really strong relationship, then ultimately everybody's going to lose. And so I think that's a lot of my passion, is to sort of, there's so much out there that can intrude on the relationship, and it can lead us to lose sight of how important it is to enjoy that time and to strengthen that connection together and focus on what we do have in common, what we do believe together, rather than what we don't believe together. Um, so yeah, I'm guessing you see some of that too, in all the
I
people you work with
see
as
it
well.
every day here in my office with other couples, but like you, to be honest, I see it in my own life too. We get caught up in so many good things, helping so many people. Eric and I run this company together that it is easy to just assume that Eric and I, are doing great. And the truth of the matter is we really can struggle. And there can be times when I can see either Eric kind of spiraling down into a bit of not a depression, but just feeling a little disconnected and sad when he sees me putting so much time and energy
Yeah.
into other people, especially, grandchildren, because they were my passion.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. They're so cute.
so cute. I can't stand it.
Yep.
And but at the same time, needing that time with just Eric. And recently for Labor Day weekend, we finally got away and we said, okay, kids, all of our children, we are not available this weekend as grandparents. We are actually going to take 4 nights all to ourselves, left town and felt connected. And we did fun things. We went golfing. I'm picking up
Yeah.
golfing for the first time ever, and it was very fun. I have my own golf rules. They are not like anyone else's, but I had fun.
Yeah.
And we puzzled. We did 3 puzzles that weekend. And it was just so much fun to be together and to reconnect and realize, God, without you, I really have none of the other things in my life.
Right. Right.
And making sure that I don't take that for granted. Because even as a, therapist, and I run a group of therapists, I can forget to listen to my own advice. So,
I mean, it seems like yeah, it seems like it's a version of how in our society too, we can often forget about ourselves, where people end up often going to coaches or individual therapists of, we get so caught up in all these things out there that we don't, pay attention to our relationship with ourself.
yeah. Well, I have just appreciated you in my life, and I'm excited and to join your project at times to help our relationship. And I so appreciate and believe in what you're doing, and you personally are changing the world one couple at a time, and that's our mission as well. So I feel like we have this kindred spirit.
We certainly do, and thanks for including me. Do you mind if I share a little bit more about the project as well?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so one of the things I've realized, so this I'm sure you can relate to. So I started leading Gottman workshops a couple years ago, probably at this point, and I always enjoyed them. I've done a lot of facilitation in my life, so while I was newer to the couple stuff, kind of the structure felt comfortable, but something always felt wrong. And so I did an event. When was this? Probably a year ago, and I remember it was a couples workshop, and I was doing it on positive psychology. So it was some of these tools where, we tend to focus on the negative. It's how we're wired from a biological standpoint. But there's actually all these great tools where we can kind of lift our heads up and look at all the good things that are happening, and we can, rather than focusing on our own limitations, we can focus on our strengths or our potentials. And at the start of the workshop, and I had spent honestly probably a year puzzling over this of no matter how many times I told people I was doing a couples workshop, there was kind of this like loss of energy, and they almost like one of those dolls. They would like droop down, and they'd be like, "Oh, I should probably do that," or they would say, "I should, I don't want to do that." But people were interested, but I could see the energy go out of them. And so I remember in this workshop, this is the first time I started using the term, which of course I didn't invent apparently, but on the slide I said, couples workshop, and then I just had an animation that like struck it out and said like fun shop. And so I was like, our tagline for today is let's have some damn fun. And this cheer went up from the room, and like everyone was like, yeah. And you could just feel the energy transform. And I think uh, I'm a big I'm a big science person, as you know. I love kind of learning about all the what's happening behind the scenes. But I think just that's like my biggest ambition is to create this environment where people feel that kind of sense of relief and fun and enjoyment about engaging with their relationship versus this kind of the invisible wagging finger about what they're doing wrong or how they're deficient. Because I think so many couples are out there and they're doing great, and the sheer amount of things that we have to juggle and manage in the modern world are off the charts. And so just having a place where coming at from that assets mindset versus that deficits mindset is like my biggest dream and aspiration with this, and what I enjoy doing most with groups. And then the second thing, we had talked a little bit about the science, and there's so much interesting relationship science, but I think one of the most interesting facts out there is this notion that when they've been looking at relationship satisfaction over time, 5 decades ago, when they first started looking at this, it was only a moderate correlation with individual happiness. So
Hmm,
that is to say that our relationship was important to our own well being, but it wasn't the most important thing out there.
right.
And over the last 5 decades, that's really changed. And we can speculate about all the reasons why. Probably a lot of us, I mean, it's amazing you're there for your grandkids and all that, but a lot of us are pretty isolated from families. We become more and more workaholic as a culture. We have these digital devices that are taking us away from human to human interactions. Um,
100%.
yeah, but now our relationship satisfaction is actually one of the strongest predictors of our individual happiness. So the stakes have gone up. There's a guy named Eli Finkel who is at Northwestern, and he wrote a book about it called The All or Nothing Marriage. And so I think just highlighting that all these other things out there that can feel so important are actually, I think, a lot less important than we think about it when compared with our relationship. And so I just always go back to this mantra of if we take care of our relationship, then our relationship will be there to take care of us when we need it. And I think that's part of the life journey of the ups and the downs, whether it's adding a child or becoming empty nesters or a remodel, which I still think is the single hardest thing any couple can go through. But whatever it might be, aging parents, that when we take that time to take care of our relationship, which is really fun, um, it'll actually be there to take care of us when we need it. And so that's I think something that our society doesn't highlight enough of how for what because of all these societal changes, the importance of our relationships has grown even more than it used to be.
I don't think anyone's talking about that, that I know of, I think that's really, really fascinating. It's really, turning the tables on our very individualistic society, and that thought, because even I would have thought that your personal health and, your own happiness, has to be, like, on par before your relationship could be on par, and what you're saying is pretty much the opposite of that. I think that's brilliant, and it actually makes so much sense, right?
I mean, yeah, we've evolved to be in, community with other people, and our society, for all the great things it's created, it has consistently made us more and more isolated over the years.
Right.
And and I want people to imagine that invisible finger wagging at you and just saying, "Have more fun with your partner."
I like
It's
it.
it's
A
going to be
whole
a
new
blast. And
message.
yeah, exactly.
Have more fun, you'll feel better, and you'll even like yourself better. I like it.
Yeah.
It's so powerful. And really, when you slow down and think about it, it makes so much sense. You're right. We were made for relationships. And we were not made to be individualistic or, the man on the island. Just that doesn't really exist in the world. And and so I think that's really powerful. And what a wonderful thing to remind people of. especially in this world
Yeah.
where we can pick up our phone and be in our own little world, which is never going to be helpful for us.
No, and I'll if you don't mind, I'll share one more piece of science that I find particularly compelling. So
Yes.
there's these fascinating research studies of how different things spread throughout human networks. And so we actually learned this from originally something called the Framingham Heart Study. And this was a study of heart health. And the idea was to figure out what are the factors that drive people with healthy hearts and unhealthy hearts. So this all takes place in Framingham, Massachusetts. It's in its seventh decade. It's not the kind of place you would think to go for a relationship study. But what people realized was this is actually a broader study of human networks. It's not just about heart health. And so people found that some really neat things spread throughout networks, including things like cooperative behaviors, happiness spreads, relationship connection spreads. And so what that means is that if Sabrina, you and I know each other, but someone that I know who you don't know, if they become happier in their relationship, you are actually likely to become happier in your relationship. It even goes out another degree than that. So that's this kind of like fascinating of like, wow, this is how humans like we're all influencing each other even when we don't even know each other.
It's it's
But
like
of course,
symbiosis, right?
yeah, I mean it's this magical thing that's happening that we can't even see. But then
Super
of course
cool.
there's a villain in every story. And so the villain in this story is that the most potent thing that spreads in human networks is loneliness.
Oh, interesting.
And so that's, when I give talks on this, I like to say this is sort of the villain of the story is that also if that person who I know but you don't know, Sabrina, becomes more lonely, you're actually more likely to become lonely. There's of
Mm,
course lots of other factors, but that's the biggest contagion in these human networks is loneliness. So what that means is that we've designed a society that we know is unfortunately promoting loneliness. And that's the importance of really looking at our relationships from an intentionality standpoint, because that is kind of the water that we're all swimming in.
that's amazing. And I think about just coming out of the pandemic and people making a lifestyle of loneliness almost,
Yeah.
and how we're combating that um, with things like what you're talking about, coming together. And I love the idea of doing the couples projects always in a group, because then you are also, it seems like if you see other happy couples, that's just got to energize your relationship as well.
I love that. I mean, I'm sure you've seen that in I attended one of your art and science of love workshops, which was excellent. And, it seems like what can happen really that's really neat in a group setting is the spreading of the positivity and the joy, but also sometimes a bit of that sense, just that reminder that whatever we might be juggling in our relationship, typically other people are dealing with it too, right? I mean,
You're
there's always the caveat that there are relationships that are, crossing lines, things like domestic violence and all of that that are totally outside the pale, but that when you get a group together of couples, we often just realize, okay, this thing which might feel like a big deal is actually not that big a deal. I see other people wrestling with it, and now we can, you know, let go of that to some extent and focus on some of the good things.
Yeah. Well, it's been really cool to hear these kind of scientific tidbits, because, as you know, I constantly am doing art and science of love couples workshops for couples, and I've got one coming up in a couple weeks, and I am going to interject some of these little um, factoids and I think it will be very inspiring for couples. It's been inspiring for me to have this conversation with you today. Thank
Well,
you.
thank you for having me. It's always such a pleasure.
Well, I wanna follow up with you in a few months and do another one of these and see how it's going after you've had a few of your dates and after we've attended a few of the dates. It'll be so fun to keep it going.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.